Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Tech Community Live and our Intune Ask Me Anything about managing your macOS devices securely and safely with Microsoft Intune. My name is Jessica Yang. I'm a product manager on the Android mobile device management team, but today I have a bunch of experts here on Mac management. So if you'd like to introduce yourselves, Arnab, why don't we start with you?
Hi, everyone. My name is Arnab Biswas. I'm a senior product manager in our Intune Apple MDM team. And my specific focus is driving our Mac management strategy in Intune and driving our journey on Mac management forward with our engineering team. Great to be here.
Awesome. Ben?
Hi, everyone. My name is Benjamin Flam. I'm a product manager also on the Apple MDM team in Intune. And I focus primarily on our admin configuration scenarios, so things like settings catalog, and DDM has been my primary focus as of late. So super excited to talk about that today.
Great. And Neil, what about you?
I'm Neil Johnson. I'm part of our customer experience engineering team, and I focus on Mac and working with our largest strategic customers.
Perfect. So as you can see at the bottom of the screen, there's a link to where you'll submit questions. But before that, I know that Arnab has a bonus demo for us today. So Arnab, do you want to talk about what you're going to be demoing?
Yes, I call this our ultimate Mac onboarding demo. And I want to show you how you can get a new Mac set up in under 5 minutes using our Intune Mac management. So let's get that rolling. So here we have a Mac that is powered on and connected to the network. And we're going through automated device enrollment using Setup Assistant that's using passwordless MFA in Entra ID. As the device initiates enrollment with Intune, we are using await final configuration to make sure that once the device enrollment certificate has come down, we are using Setup Assistant to complete the first device check-in before the user can start using the device. So that provides you a level of peace of mind to make sure that all your device configuration policies, organizational policies are on the device and installed before the user can use the device. And that's really super important in our existing hybrid work world, where the user could really be working from anywhere and you do not have direct line of sight to how it is getting set up. So yeah, it also simplifies your onboarding experience for the user if the user is within Setup Assistant and going through that experience. So as this finishes up, the next step is the local account creation, and you'll see how we are pre-populating the information from Entra ID to create that local account. And we are also bringing that here. And the user has to enter their local password, which is really a temporary password, and continue. And on macOS 14 and above, now you can start enforcing firewall disk encryption within Setup Assistant, which is great because another one less reason for the user to be non-compliant once they're on the desktop. So here, as the user lands on desktop, they get the notification for Platform SSO, and they're being prompted to register the device. So this is Entra joining the Mac, which is going to create a hardware-bound device identity that will be used for conditional access and also for syncing their Entra ID password natively so that they can use their Entra ID password to then log into their Mac. And here, the user, this is the one time the user would need to enter their Entra ID password so that it can start syncing to the local account. And they can, from then on, they can now start using their Entra ID password on the local account login. And on macOS 14, you get a nice notification saying that was successful. And meanwhile, we have had other apps trying to install. And here we have pushed Microsoft Defender as a required application. And we used pre-install scripts to make sure it comes down in the right order and can be installed, activated without requiring any user action, as you see here. So now as the user starts to get productive by launching Outlook and start work, the enterprise single sign-on extension kicks in. It recognizes the user is already signed in, and we run them through one last conditional access check and compliance check to make sure everything is good before granting access to email. And so I think that's a super powerful demo that really brings together a lot of the work, both feature-wise and security-wise, that we have put in over the last couple of years to really streamline and simplify how Mac is provisioned and users onboard into Intune.
Yeah, I don't know if Arnab remembers this, but a very, very long time ago, I used to work on Mac when it was, just getting started. And it's really amazing to see just, how far Mac management has come within Intune. So just a reminder, you can ask us any of your questions at the link that's on the screen, or that's aka.ms/ama/securemacOS. And I think we have our first question coming in from the tech community from Pelle. So when enrolling a Mac, the user becomes the root user on that Mac. How would I go about converting this root or primary user to a standard user without local admin rights? Does anybody want to take that?
I can take a first stab at it. So I think there are several ways to achieve this. So one would be you can use so first of all, Macs require that you have at least one admin user present on the device. So to downgrade that user, you need at least one other admin user present. Now, if you have another admin user present, then for the second user, you could, there are several options to downgrade that user. So one is to use a script to make that user from an admin to a standard user. If you want to use more MDM-based tooling, Platform SSO is actually a great way to define what authorization rights a user has. So you could define whether a user that's logging in should have admin rights or standard rights as a new user, and also what would be the persistent rights for that user. So that is another way to do that. And another item that we are working on and will be improving in the future is defining the user rights when the device is getting set up using local account creation. So today, Intune supports local admin account creation, and we are working hard to support the admin and standard account creation, where the admin is really the background recovery account that gets created for recovery purposes, but the actual user account is a standard account that gets created and used by the user.
Gotcha. Great. We have another question from Anthony on the tech community. So on the topic of Platform SSO, which you mentioned, Arnab, will it be possible, or will there be documentation to integrate Platform SSO with Macs that are managed in Jamf, Pro, or Connect, without moving the management of them outside of Jamf into Intune?
So Platform SSO is a capability in the macOS operating system. And the Platform SSO capabilities that we are talking about are very specific to how it will be through Intune and between Intune and Entra ID. However, because it is a platform capability, other MDMs are free to build support for that. I believe, yeah, that is going to come, but I cannot really comment on how they're going to define the workings between Jamf and Entra ID. I can only speak to the Intune part of it.
That makes sense. So this next question, I think maybe Neil, you might be in a good position to answer this one. This is a question from Kafir on LinkedIn. How do you deal with migrating from another MDM? And how do you deal with Macs being managed manually and having apps installed unmanaged?
Yeah, that's a really great question. Actually, we're hearing this a lot right now, as many of our customers are looking to simplify and reduce costs by moving to Intune. So the first thing that we would normally do in this case is to understand what you were doing today. So when I work with a customer and we're doing migrations, that the biggest amount of time, the largest amount of time by far, goes on looking at exactly what you're doing to your devices today, and challenging why we're doing them, because many people have been managing Macs for a long time, and some of those policies and payloads are deprecated now, or are solving problems that don't exist anymore. So it's tempting just to want to lift your current payloads and take them straight over to Intune, which we can do. We can just export them and then we can import them as custom policy. But it usually is it's much better from an admin perspective and from an end user perspective if we start to look at all of those payloads, challenge why they're there, and then try to define a new set of policies and payloads in Intune. And then once we've done that, you then have the process of how do you get your devices from the current MDM over to Intune. And there are two ways to do that. If they're corporate ADE devices, so they're in Apple Business Manager and they're going to use automated device enrollment, typically what we would do is factory reset them. So we would send them a reset. So we switch the MDM destination in Apple Business Manager, and we can do that way ahead of time. And then when you factory reset the Mac, when it powers back on, it will just automatically enroll into Intune and follow that that flow that Arnab just demoed, right? So they would do that. It's a bit scary to factory reset your machine, but you do that, and then it goes through that process. There are some steps we like to do before that, so things like deploying OneDrive known folder move. So that all of the data and desktop and documents and things get synchronized up to OneDrive before we do that. If it's a personal Mac or a BYO Mac or something that's not coming in via ADE, it's a bit simpler because we just uninstall the management profile and then reinstall the management profile for Intune, right? So typically we would put company portal down using the existing MDM platform and then provide the end user with the instructions to re-enroll into Intune. I think the question was talking about how as well do we deal with things like apps and things like that that are already installed. So, if you've already got Office installed and things like that, how do you deal with that? Typically, we would use the pre and post scripts in the PKGs within Intune. So we can do some clever things within those in the payloads to check to see if we need to do anything, or if we don't, or most commonly actually it's cleanup activities. It's things like we're about to install Office. We probably want to clean up any previous and older versions of Office and things like that before we put the later versions in. So lots of that kind of thing. I talk about it as defensive IT, right? So you kind of imagine the worst case scenario that the device could be in, and then that's what you plan for, right? So that you're trying to do the as much as you can to avoid the end user having a poor experience. So that's normally how we approach it.
Neil, I'm curious. So I know if you don't want to factory reset your Mac and it is a corporate Mac, I know we have a way documented where you can just switch the MDM in which the token is managed and then run a command to renew the enrollment profile, and that should switch out the MDM. How does that work in practice?
It's pretty good actually, but you lose some things when you do that, right? So what you can do is you can unmanage the Mac. So as a corporate Mac, you can unmanage it rather than erase it, and then you can put down the MDM payload. But the only way to do that is via web enrollment or via company portal. So what you end up with is a BYO Mac essentially. There's no difference between that Mac and a personally enrolled Mac. They're both come in as supervised, but we start to lose some really key values of that, right? Because like for little things which often customers miss, but the enrollment profile doesn't get tagged in Intune when we do it that way. So if, for example, we have policies assigned to all devices and then a filter for the enrollment profile name, which is usually how we would handle ADE enrollment flows and policy assignments and app assignments, none of those will get assigned to devices in that way. And things like await config won't work as well. So you can do it, but there are subtle and not so subtle issues that you run into when you do it that way.
So clean break is the best way to do it.
If you can, that's what Apple recommends too, and I can only empathize and sympathize with our customers, because it's the same when you migrate from any MDM platform to any other MDM platform, and the thought of having to erase your device is scary for many. So some customers will handle this. Well, some customers will handle this by sending them a different device. So they'll say, it's almost like a rolling upgrade, where they'll get sent a MacBook Pro. They'll enroll the new one and get up and running, and then they post their old one back, or they hand their old one back to IT, and it kind of goes through this rolling upgrade process. But same thing with Windows. Windows upgrades tend to be the same. So it's and iOS for AD tends to be the same as well. But it just feels a lot scarier when it's your laptop rather than your phone.
Yeah. And I haven't heard the phrase defensive IT before, so I'm going to start using that. Yeah, Neil's got experience with probably hundreds of customers at this point, so whatever he says. Okay, we have a question from Bassem on the tech community. It's about Platform SSO again. Is there an integration flow for Platform SSO for existing local users on a personal computer account who are already enrolled with Apple Business Manager?
Yes. So the way currently Platform SSO works, it's actually its own sort of independent unit that could occur, as a flow, as you saw in the automated device enrollment, which I showed in the demo. But that could also happen in a device that is already enrolled, whether that is a company-owned device or a bring your own device that you manage. All that's really needed is that the SSO extension is installed that supports Platform SSO, as well as that you have pushed down the MDM configuration through Intune for Platform SSO to be set up. And once the device syncs, the macOS will prompt you the registration required notification, which essentially starts the process of Platform SSO. So yeah, you could do it for any managed user on macOS 13 and above, I believe, and the experience is the same.
Awesome. So we have a question from Richard on the tech community, which is, will Intune's device check-in ever be configurable instead of the current default of 8 hours?
I can take this one if that's okay. So this is definitely one of the things that we hear the most. And going back to what I was saying earlier, just super excited about DDM and talking about it. For those that don't know DDM, Declarative Device Management, was announced a few years ago at WWDC. And then this past year, Apple actually made the statement of the future of device management is declarative device management. And one of the major benefits of it is that devices become more autonomous and proactive. And so obviously the 8-hour check-in is something that's not just specific to Mac or Apple platforms in Intune, but it's across all platforms. So we're exploring how, we might not even need, an 8-hour check-in window or whatever it might be, just so that, devices are actually reporting changes in their status more proactively. So it's not, just every, 4 hours or 8 hours or 12 hours. You're notified of when these changes are happening. So there's definitely no timelines or anything on that, but it's something we're actively looking into and definitely hear you on.
Awesome. Question from Beskar on LinkedIn. How do we deploy desktop shortcuts on the Mac with Intune?
Gotcha. I can also take this one. So Apple does have a native MDM payload. It's web clips for macOS. They do install only on the dock though, but that is native. So if you're looking for something that's going to just install outside of the dock, then that might be something that's more of a feedback item for Apple, and maybe something that we could explore in terms of unmanaged what is it? Complex PKG, so agent-based. But would love to hear more about that scenario if you can share.
Yeah. And sorry, were you?
Yeah, just one additional comment on what Ben said, and I do not know concretely, but I wonder if scripts is also another way. If you have installed an application and you want to create a shortcut for that, if there's a script for that.
You can pretty much do anything with a script. So yeah, or I mean, with something like this, we'd probably look at customizing the PKG itself. So if we wanted to, which interestingly, this is an uncommon thing, right? So I'd be really curious where this is coming from. So if I installed a Mac app and it put a link on my desktop, I'd be very unhappy. I don't like that at all. And it's a really uncommon thing. It's a very common thing for Windows things to do. So I think alarm bells are ringing there that perhaps you're trying to make Mac work like Windows, and that's normally a recipe for disaster. So the web clips, as Ben mentioned, put stuff in the dock. That's where apps should go. Put them in the dock. If you absolutely have to put it on the desktop, then yeah, I'm pretty sure we could do it with a script if we had to.
Yeah, exactly. That last point is pretty important. So as a reminder to everyone who's watching, you can always add more information. You can post a reply to your comment, or you can follow up again. And we'll stick around after the end as well, and we'll be looking through all of the comments. Okay, so our next question comes from Jory on the tech community. Is there an Azure LAPS in the pipeline to manage local admin users on a Mac?
I think I should probably take this one.
Yeah.
So we are looking at this at the moment. It links to the question earlier about creating local standard users, because as Arnav mentioned, before we can create a standard user during Setup Assistant, we also have to create an admin account on the Mac too, right? So that the payload won't let us create a standard user unless there's an admin user too. And we're really concerned about that, because it means we have to deal with the admin password, right? So before we can set that local admin account, we have to then deal with the local admin password itself. And we need to make sure we've got somewhere secure to handle that, and that we can escrow that and rotate it and do all of the things that our customers expect of us, right? Because it's a highly sensitive account. So we're starting to look into how we could perform similar integrations that we've done on Windows for Mac. So we don't have any timelines on that, but we're kind of actively looking at that and trying to learn from what our colleagues on Windows have done. And hopefully that's what we'll do. So we'll have that local account creation and integration with LAPS, and at the same time be able to flip that local user to a standard user in Setup Assistant. So stuff for later in the year, though.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, a question from Sanjeev. Where are we with app compliance? And does Intune allow us to automatically remove a macOS PKG app automatically when it's unscoped to the user? Not fully sure what that means.
Sounds like an Arnav question. Definitely sounds like an Arnav question.
I'm not sure what app compliance means, but in general, we are actively building the custom compliance experience that already exists for Windows and Linux, which could also include, any app compliance you would like to include. In terms of removing of applications, the uninstall assignment type or intent is currently supported with VPP or line of business types of applications, I believe. However, it is a little more complex when complex apps are involved. So if you have been keeping tabs on our app management story over time, in the last couple of years, we have added a new pipeline for apps that is using our Intune agent to install applications. And this enables you to really install disk images, so DMGs containing .app files, as well as any kind of .pkg files that are installed using the installer command, which gives you a lot more flexibility around what type of packages you can install. Now, with that flexibility comes the more of a challenge on how do I uninstall that application, because that PKG could have really run a script, not install anything, or could have put things outside the applications folder. So yeah, it's really, it can be quite varied. What we are going to do in the future is really allowing admins more of a control over how do you detect that an install has happened, and similarly, how do you detect how to uninstall an application. So giving you more customization on, maybe you not only need to depend on the presence of bundle ID or a bundle version, which are the current assumptions we make about an app being installed, but also figuring out, providing other ways to uninstall apps, which you could have more control over using scripts. So yeah, that is something definitely we'll be thinking about in the future as we build our app management story for Mac.
I think I just want to add to that, Arnab, in that the uninstall is an explicit intent. So we don't remove apps from any of our platforms when the assignments change. So if you add a user to a group and we put an app on the device, and then you remove the user from the group, we don't auto remove that across any of the platforms. And that's a conscious decision on our part, because we've seen in the past issues where from the identity side, we either get a bad signal about a user not being in a group, or thousands or tens of thousands of users not being in a group, or somebody makes a mistake on the identity side. So somebody on the identity side may run a script and remove a bunch of users from a group and then re-add them back in shortly afterwards. So for those destructive things like wiping and uninstalling apps, we kind of require the admin intent, right? So we require you to do something. It is something we're tracking, the requests to do that and change that behavior. Although there is like I say, a significant reluctance to do that just because of the damage it could cause. So that's why the behavior is the way it is today.
Exactly. I would say that's a pretty consistent Intune design philosophy. Is just, we want to make sure that if something is destructive, we really treat it with a lot of caution. So we have a question from Luke. Are there any plans for bootstrap packages so that we can enhance onboarding even further and potentially remove the need for setting a temporary local password for Platform SSO setup?
Yeah, that's just kind of top of mind for me this week, as we have been looking into it and we're hearing a lot of feedback. So yes, that is certainly something we are actively thinking about. And ultimately, our goal really is, I spoke about and showed you the await final configuration that we use to hold the user in Setup Assistant. But we also want to include apps as part of that and really enable our admins to say which apps need to land first on the device, because we know a lot of customers can use certain applications like Octary, Swift Dialog, Dep Notify, etc., to really provide a more customized enrollment experience after Setup Assistant. And we want to make sure that you can guarantee that your Bootstrap package gets there first. So yeah, there are several options we're exploring. I talked about our final configuration. We're also looking at how we could use our agent to allow some kind of guaranteed delivery of the Bootstrap package first. So I believe, yeah, you'll be hearing something more concrete from us about that, as this is top of mind for us right now.
That's really good to hear. And just a reminder to everybody, we would love to hear how we're doing, how you're finding this event so far. Please share your thoughts at aka.ms/Intune feedback, and that will go to our team. And yeah, would love to hear what your thoughts are. Great. Okay, we have a question from LinkedIn. This is from Vinos Kumar. Is there an option to uninstall or reinstall Office 365 apps on Mac upon Intune enrollment? I think is what the question is.
Shall I take this one?
Sure.
So what we typically would do with this kind of thing. So if we were enrolling a device, one of the first things we need to make a decision on is what to do with those apps that are already there. Office is always a big one, right? So I'm using my personal Mac, right? I work on my Mac Mini. I enroll it. As an organization, you need to make a decision, right, on what to do. Do we perhaps use a script to check if Office is installed and then quit out and do nothing, right? So Office is already there. I'm good. I'm going to back off and leave this Office install. Or am I going to just reinstall Office anyway? Or am I going to reset Office and reinstall it? So do a complete wipe and a complete reinstall. And so once you've made that decision, with the bigger apps and the more complicated apps, scripts are usually the best way of handling that. So, and there's a bunch of really cool tools. So Paul Bowden maintains a great website called Office Reset. So for Office specifically, if you want to kind of completely remove and relay down Office as part of that onboarding, then you can do that. In the pre-install script, you could write some detection code in there to see if Office is installed. You could call the Office reset process. That would remove the remove Office completely. It's even got a reinstall option actually, but we typically won't use that. We'll just remove it and then let the main package reinstall it. And then in our post install, we might just validate that it's there. But it's worth understanding that can be quite destructive, right? So if it's a corporate Mac that you own, that's great. But if it's somebody's personal device, obviously there are different considerations there, right? You don't want to be wiping somebody's build of Office just because it's old, right? They may be purposely keeping that version of Office to open old documents or whatever else. So I would say tread carefully on BYO Macs when it comes to removing things. But for corporate stuff, yeah, you can deal with it all in pre-install scripts if you need to, or you could just use a completely custom script. So we've got custom samples on our GitHub repo, which show you how you can do that with Office. So you could do anything basically, but you could do all kinds of clever things with Office and remove it completely down to all of the old preferences and anything in application support and all of the bits and bobs that it puts across the file system, and then start again from scratch.
Thank you, Neil. We have a question from Brett on the tech community. So how big a user impact will the change from local accounts to Entra synced accounts be? Will the user need new folders? Is OneDrive going to carry over? What kind of impact does that change have?
So yeah, this is a good question, and I can kind of see where it's coming from, probably from the Windows side of the world. So for Macs, when you do sync the account with Entra, remember when we were setting it up the first time, we still had to create a local account. So all that this Platform SSO did was really change the local password to be the Entra ID password. And now the SSO extension guarantees that it's going to keep that in sync. And that is how, and it will detect if the password changes even outside the device and prompt the user to enter their new password. And the Entra ID password then, for all intents and purposes, becomes the password, the local account password wherever that's needed, whether that's to, unencrypt your file vault drive when the Mac boots up, to do, if you're an admin user and you need to elevate your privileges, you need to use the password, you can use that. And it also allows you to now start using Touch ID for logging into the Mac. So anywhere else where the Mac is already logged in and you just want to unlock, so any place where you could use the local account password or Touch ID, now you can use the Entra ID password or Touch ID. Now, in terms of any other Microsoft 365 integrations, those do not automatically move over, but the benefit that you get is because your Platform SSO is kind of built on top of the single sign-on extension, so it allows it to not just sync your password, but also get all the authentication tokens from Entra ID and allow you to access, I showed Outlook in the demo, but basically any Microsoft 365 app. So if you are pushing down OneDrive for that user, now that user can be signed into OneDrive without them having to interactively sign in again. So all of that can be very seamlessly set up and configured. But just from the action of thinking the password, that is not happening. That is happening as a result of both Platform SSO being active and the admin having deployed and configured OneDrive, and OneDrive is just utilizing the single sign-on capabilities to seamlessly sign in.
I think just to add to that, actually, that there's nothing changing for the user profile. So the home folder doesn't change. It stays exactly the same. So if you've got a local user account today, and let's say all of your Macs today, you've got which they will be, they'll all be using local accounts today. When you deploy single sign-on or platform single sign-on, that doesn't change. Nothing changes. We just attach, so we connect that local account to Entra, but we don't change those folders. So from an end user perspective, they just get a load of benefits, but their desktop doesn't change, their dock doesn't change, anything that they've stored in documents and desktop and all of that stuff doesn't change. Even if they've got something like known folder move configured, it won't change. Outlook will, OneDrive will just remain signed in, right? None of that stuff changes. They just get a new identity. A new identity that Platform single sign-on can use. So any of the Microsoft authentication library apps can just make use of it. So it's actually really slick for existing users. They don't get much interference. They just get a little pop-up. They tap the button. If they're using Secure Enclave, that's pretty much it, right? They just get a passwordless auth prompt, and then they're done, and they just get single sign-on and the kind of Windows Hello for Business experience that we get on other platforms. So but yeah, no change to the local accounts.
Right, that makes sense. And I really love to see this degree of IT pro concern for the end user experience. It warms my heart personally. So on behalf of end users everywhere, thank you. Okay, we have a question from Vaishnav. I'm currently managing Mac devices via Jamf. Can you share some best practices on migrating to Intune, and will all Jamf supported features be available in Intune? So before you guys jump in, Vaishnav, I don't know if you just joined. Neil answered a similar question a bit closer to the start of the session. So the replay for this will be available as well. But having said that, do you want to maybe give a quick summary, Neil or Arnav or Ben?
I was going to say Ben should probably talk about settings catalog and how we are feature complete, how we get those Apple payloads into Intune. How does that process work?
Yeah, definitely. And definitely go back and watch the recording to learn more about the migration scenarios. But yeah, I guess taking a step back from the settings catalog, the question about all supported features in Jamf will be supported in Intune. Our strategy with that is really we don't want to just get into this checkbox battle of, this other MDM is doing this other MDM is doing this, so we need to. Going back to what Neil said with the migration scenarios, we really want both us and all of our customers to take a step back and really understand the scenarios that they're trying to solve. And so what we did in that regard is, with the settings catalog, we acknowledged that we had this gap in payload support in mobile, but also specifically more for macOS. And so we only supported maybe a fraction of the payloads, and our old infrastructure really made it difficult for us to really keep up with what Apple was releasing. So we took a step back and we thought, like, how can we do this in a more data-driven manner? And so I don't know if y'all have seen the new Apple MDM GitHub repo that has all of their payloads, and everything from pretty much their developer documentation has been carried over to repo. And so what we've done is we've taken that in a way that we're able to ingest it into Intune. It renders UI, we're able to test it. And actually that has driven our time to support down from, maybe a few months of work to just a few hours. With the caveat that, of course, we're still at the mercy of service releases and when Apple updates their documentation, but we're a lot more quick with it now. And as far as our overall strategy, doing this and having this more data-driven infrastructure has really freed us up to innovate on top of we just have support for all of our standard MDM, like everything in Apple's native protocols, and now we can take a step back and say, okay, how can we actually innovate on top of this? So yeah, we're super excited about that investment, and would love to hear any feedback you have on it as well.
And
Arnab.
Can I add something to that? So my recommendation to Vaishnav would also be, we hear this all the time, customers moving from either totally on-prem solutions or sort of these specialized sort of solutions that are only looking at, say, the Apple ecosystem. But when you are really bringing any other operating system into Microsoft 365 or Intune, our recommendation is, hey, don't think of it in isolation. Yes, that is the environment you're coming from, and that is how you know how to manage the device. But you really need to think about it as, okay, I already have M365. I'm managing all these other platforms. How do I bring Mac into that? Because ultimately, the visibility, your leadership or your security or operations folks would want is really to make sure that you can apply the same sort of consistent management and security and compliance policies across the board. So that becomes a lot easier if you're really thinking about your zero trust or unified endpoint management initiative broadly as like, okay, these are the standards I need to meet for my desktop environments, whether that's Windows or Mac. And then I think Intune does a pretty good job of really keeping that consistency across the board and across the infrastructure, while also really taking advantage of the platform benefits and the intricacies. But I wouldn't say that start with those intricacies. I think start with the big picture of what are the organization or IT or security goals I need to hit. How does Intune able to meet those for XYZ platform? And then what are the gaps that we are still not meeting? Tell us about those. That is exactly how we have successfully worked with many customers who have moved to Microsoft 365 and Intune to manage their Macs. So yeah, it does require a little more work and really stepping back from what you're currently used to, and that is uncomfortable, understandably. But that is our recommendation to make this as seamless and transparent as possible.
Yeah, every migration is a little bit of a mindset shift. But that's really great advice, Arnab. Okay, we We had a request from Kasim for a demo of Platform SSO. So if you just joined us, welcome. Arnab actually shared a demo of that at the beginning. So once the recording of this goes live, you'll be able to watch that again. A question from Mark. Are there any plans for a packaging tool to convert DMG to PKG files? Lots of our vendors are creating installs with DMG, and it makes silent installs very difficult.
Interesting. We do not have plans to release any kind of additional tooling for packaging conversion. Neil, do you know if there is anything out there available that could be used?
So this is an interesting one. So for DMGs with an app inside the DMG, Intune handles that natively. So and silently too. So if it's like a standard DMG just with an app inside, just upload that to Intune and it will deal with it for you. If you've got something more complicated, right? So I worked through a couple of really pesky apps last week with a customer where we had a DMG, and then inside there we had some app install binaries, and then we had some JSON within that as well. So it was a super complicated app install process. The way we handle that is custom PKG. So we create a custom PKG, we put the DMG actually inside the custom PKG, and then we use pre and post scripts to mount the DMG and to trigger the various things that we need to do. As for tools to do that, we don't have plans to do anything, predominantly because the free the free tooling is excellent. So normally when I work with customers, I use the white box packages tool. So if you search for white box packages, that's a really, really great tool. You just need to give it full disk access, and then you can create a PKG, fully GUI driven. You can create the pre and post scripts in there, and then just deploy that via Intune. So we've got no plans to do that, partially because the tooling that's available already for free is great. So
makes sense, yeah. JF is wondering, mobile devices have app protection policies, and Edge also has MAM in Windows. Do you have any recommendations on what to use as a built-in data loss protection mechanism for macOS?
Yes, we periodically get asked this question. So I think, yeah, for mobile platforms, I think a lot of our success on app protection policies and MAM has really been because of the architecture of those mobile platforms being more sandboxed. I think Mac inherently makes that very difficult, being a pretty open operating system. We have looked at if there is a enough value add MAM feature set that we could build on Mac, but we really felt that to do that, it has to be a first party app, so something like Edge, like you have on Windows, that we could fully control. But we really don't think on a Mac the end user would want to be the experience to be limited to just a browser. So yeah, so far we don't think there's a good solution there where we could build something that would both meet the organization or the admin requirements as well as the user experience that a user expects from their Mac. So yeah, no plans really for us to support app protection policies on Mac at the moment.
What I would add, though, is information rights management is supported across all of the Office apps natively. So, and we also have Purview support for Mac too. So they all provide the combination of IRM, which is native across all of our apps, and Purview too. They will be, they'll kind of bring all kinds of capabilities and support in for protecting your corporate data on Mac and on your other platforms too.
All right, that makes sense. All right. Well, I'm gonna give us a lightning round to close this off. So I'm wondering if anybody has either like a favorite Mac management feature or like the #1 tip that you want to share with the audience today when it comes to managing Macs. So let's go in reverse order of the intro. So Neil, do you want to start us off?
Oh, wow, I wasn't prepared for this. So what things do I like? I'm really nerdy. There's a few tools that I absolutely love, and I love the way the Mac community write their own stuff, right? I think it's just amazing where if there's a gap in there, the Mac community will just kind of come together and spin up their own tools. Swift Dialogue is something that I think is absolutely excellent. I love to see what our customers have done with that. So the ability to kind of manage this onboarding process and just to see, I'll show them a quick demo of it, and then I see them 6 months later, and they've built this hugely complex and kind of beautiful onboarding flow. So that's one of the top tools, I think, for me that I love to see our customers using and deploying with Intune.
Awesome. Ben, what's your #1 thing?
Yeah, I mean, like I said before, my #1 thing is definitely the DDM protocol being added on top of MDM, which is obviously not nearly as like user facing as we think as it could be right now. If you've noticed with our software update release, it provides a really sleek new user experience to where a lot of the OS update management has been moved to the device. And so right now, as I like explore more of these DDM scenarios, I feel like that there's a lot of potential to solve not just even just Apple platform specific things, but for just device management in general. And so I've been having a lot of fun with it and exploring it. And like I said, our team definitely wants to hear your feedback in any scenarios you think that DDM could be useful.
Perfect. And Arnaud, want to close this out?
Yeah, I think my favorite thing really is what doesn't exist anymore, that you don't need an app wrapping tool anymore to manage.
I remember that.
That is such a great one. That is such a great one.
And no, I think, frankly, like we have really made very long strides in our app management story to the point where, we feel comfortable saying to customers that, hey, if you have apps today, you can lift and shift them to Intune and they should work as you expect. So yeah, I feel very proud about achieving that. We feel that we are, almost there, like I would say like 95% there with most of the applications and even larger applications now. As of January, we have extended support to like 8 gig size limit for applications. So yeah, if you're running into issues, please let us know so we can address those. But yeah, we want you to make sure that you have what you need to be able to deploy all the apps that you need in your Intune environment.
Great. Well, all right. Thank you so much, Neil, Ben, Arnab. Thanks for taking the past hour with us to answer questions. And of course, to your community, thank you for all the questions. We will continue answering your submissions on the tech community for about the next half hour or so. And we'll also be checking back through Friday. So just feel free to keep adding questions. If you miss this live event, again, we'll be here through Friday. So next up, I think we have a Ask Microsoft Anything session about Windows. So stick around for that, and thank you again for attending today. All right, bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.